We have Professor Sethugelo Matebesi back on the line. Professor, good to speak to you. We seem to have noticed a pattern with Jacob Zuma where he refuses, or for one reason or the other, does not engage the judiciary until the 11th hour. And typical of what's happened with this Concord judgment and his appeal to have that decision rescinded.
Well, I think this is a consequence of what we've been battling in South Africa immediately after our first democratically elected president, President Nelson Mandela, and then to a certain extent Thabo Mbeki, where we still battle with the separation of the three arms of the state. And to a certain extent, people like Jacob Zuma still does not understand the whole issue of consequence management, to say that there will be consequences for the conduct of public servants. And I think that's where it comes. He sees himself above every single South African, and even some of the supporters that we've seen out there brandishing guns in public and stuff like that. This is something which I think is sending will be a very dangerous precedent for South Africans, legal precedents, because at the end of the day, if they are going to keep on doing this, because then other South African citizens who have the means, financial means, to challenge these such cases, their own cases, will definitely try to open up that avenue. And I don't think it's good for democracy. But for me, this is also definitely indicative of what we've been battling since the dawn of democracy, where some of our leaders have mastered the technique of how to exploit the state and certain arms, which are supposed to be separate to their own advantage. And this is the hallmark of what we're experiencing today in South Africa.
Now, the Concord was pretty clear in its judgment that they wanted to make an example of Jacob Zuma, obviously to deter precedents. Now, he's just made an appeal, and the Concord has agreed to hear that appeal. What do you make of that?
Well, we should understand Zuma has been a former president, and whether we can now debate this for the next 30 years, to a large extent, I'm a sociologist, and I know certain people, and I think what the Constitution is going to do, I can even predict that they're going to affirm the decision that they have taken. But what they're doing now is just once again to show to South Africans and all the cheerleaders and the cheermen who are out there in Nkandla that Zuma is definitely not being witch hunted, because you can't prove political, you had to prove, political agendas within the court. But political agendas have nothing to do with the case that Zuma is facing. All these nitty-gritty things. But for me, definitely, I think that's why I indicated I don't understand why the Constitutional Court also acceded to this demand. But what was also very significant for the very first time, where you find the court instructing the law, like for instance, the South African police minister, what to do, because believe me or not, if they did not make any pronouncement on that, we would have taken the next 2 months still deciding what needs to be happening. And that's the nature of our politics, where our politicians try, because they are all in this mess, trying to protect one another, whether you're in the Cyril camp or in the so-called Zuma camp. This is the nature of politics today. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's South Africans who have to bear the consequences of all what is playing out on our political landscape today.
Now, the president, in his defense, if former president in his defense, has said he's almost 80 years old. He is sickly. He's on medication that he needs to take continually. Will this be a factor? No, not at all. President Jacob Zuma, just like Donald Trump in America, there's huge similarities.
He had all the opportunities to state his case, but what did he do? I don't think the Constitutional Court will entertain that. Definitely not. Age is not a reason for somebody not to face the consequences. You have ample opportunities. And I think even those South Africans who have not been sympathetic with Jacob Zuma for many years would have been, if he came up and showed respect to our courts of laws. I think that was a grave mistake. And I know some people have questioned that, but why do we even talk about Zuma's legal team? But there are huge questions about the advice that Zuma has been getting. And he can't now come and use that, because if you consult with your legal advice and at the end of the day indicate whether you will go with that. Zuma has a team not only of legal advisors. I strongly believe that he still have people who advise him, and they were fully aware of the consequences, but they were also aware of a very conducive environment which have been created in South Africa. And it's an environment where we do not take responsibility for our actions. This is a very dangerous move for South Africa. Believe me or not, those people who have lost their lives for this democracy, I think that they would have lost their life in vain if we are going to accept
Professor, before I let you go,
political shenanigans coming from Zuma.
Professor, before we let you go, I'd like to find out, what are the options that are available to the Concourt when they hear Jacob Zuma's appeal?
Well, the Concourt once again will have to make a pronouncement. Remember, they were quite clear as to what should happen after the judgment was made. Zuma was supposed to hand him in today, and after 3 days, if he didn't do that, then the police minister had to. I think they will have to revisit that pronouncement, because then it will be an open-ended thing. Nobody will know what to act, and Zuma will once again say, no, but I knew I was supposed to have handed me in on the 4th of July, but then this case. So I think they will have to once again make a pronouncement on this to say they affirm the decision that they have taken, and then perhaps give Zuma another 3. Maybe they will shorten the days where he will have to hand him over, or perhaps even immediately have to hand him over. I don't know what's going to happen, or whether he will even be physically in the court. I don't think so, but those are the things that I think will play out when Concourt convene again.
Professor, thank you kindly for your time this morning. Political analyst from the University of the Free State, Professor Sethugelo Matebesi.